Alright, I'm gonna assume that that's at a proper everything. What's up, everybody on the internet while I'm on my phone doing something else? Today we're going to be discussing the late Anne Rice's this one, the Claiming of Sleeping Beauty. This is not the Claiming of Sleeping Beauty. This is Beauty's Release, third in the series, and the only one that I own because I got caught with it in the rain, so I had to get it from the library. Yeah, the Sleeping Beauty Trilogy is what is kind of called. It's actually known more often as the Sleeping Beauty Quartet, because this book, well, the trilogy, the original trilogy, was written in between The Interview with the Vampire and The Vampire Lestat. She wrote a fourth one in 2015 called Beauty's Kingdom, and I'm not going to review that because I just read 3 erotic novels in a row. You know, I need a refractory period or something. First things first, this is a retelling of Sleeping Beauty, but with the BDSM kick to it. It's very 50 Shades of Grey. I say that, of course, not having read 50 Shades of Grey or seen the movie, but it's a smut book. Like, every chapter is just scenes of graphic sex, you know, guy, girl, 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 guy, guy. There's, you know, animals involved sometimes. There's furry play. Like, you can't even think about it with like a politically correct 21st century, you know, view of what should be happening in your imagination as you read it. Because, I mean, from the jump, Beauty is 14 years old, right? When she gets woken up by Prince Rapacious, and he's 18, so, you know. That story, right? What are you gonna do, right? It's completely removed from, like, I don't know, reality, this fantasy through and through. It wasn't even until the 3rd book that she even mentioned that places like Europe and Arabia are distinct and known land masses on this clod of land that they live on. Not to mention the fact that no one ever gets pregnant or even has a period throughout the entire novel, even though they all keep busting raw in each other. So, I mean, fantasy. These things that I talked about, like this, like, you know, these taboo sexual things, you know, Beauty being a young teen. Sometimes there's animals involved, but there's nothing about these, you know, these things that struck me as deviant in like a fetishistic way. I guess it's not enough to say that it didn't bother me, because it takes, I don't know, weird things bother me. Don't get bothered by it. Like, I mean, I read Dead Inside and thought it was weak sauce, so maybe I'm not the one to ask about stuff like that. So I guess I'll just get to the part where I break down the whole series. I'm not gonna, you know, get into the nitty-gritty, because that would be kind of boring to just describe like who sleeps with who and my Bruce Hulse. That's not what I'm into. I guess that's a kind of an odd reference. If you've ever read Bruce Hulse's autobiography, it essentially breaks down into, oh, then I did a photo shoot with this model and we totally smashed. Nice, bro.
This was an official. I ain't finna read that bonus review. Thank you for your support.
Anywho, yeah, let's just get to it. I'm talking a lot. So skip over. Yeah, it begins with Sleeping Beauty. Princess Beauty having been asleep for like 100 years, and then Prince Charming or whatever, he doesn't have a name. Beauty doesn't have a name. The prince doesn't really have a name. So anyway, he goes into her castle, and all the people who tried to wake her up before, just their bodies and skeletons are all around. And he goes up to her and all of his, you know, brazenness, and just rips her clothes off while she's comatose, and starts having his way with her corpse, you know, her still body. And then she starts to wake up and she has an orgasm. She orgasms to life. Pow, you're my sex slave now. He, you know, broke the curse, so he gets the girl. But where he's from, like, his kingdom, his mom, Queen Eleanor, she takes tributes, young nobles from the neighboring kingdoms. They all give their princes and princesses into her sex slavery for a few years. They say it's to like make them better or something, make them wiser. And in a sense it does, because I mean it's kind of hard to act like you're above everybody when everybody saw, you know, how hard you came when the stable boy railed you out. You know, you can't really hide that, so you have to be yourself in a situation like that, you know. Of course no one says that in the book, I'm just saying, like, but at this point Beauty is what, 14, 15, and she, before her 100 years of sleep, she was just a bored kid in her castle, and now it's just like, holy crap, she's taken away from home, she's naked all the time, and he like takes her to his kingdom and everyone is just looking at her naked, and he lets people feel her up. So she goes to the kingdom, and then it's like, whoa, I'm not the only slave here. There's hundreds of young men and women with heavy breasts and thick cocks, because fantasy. She's having trouble like dealing with the fact that she has no, you know, agency. Everybody is always dominating her in some way, feeling her up. They can do whatever they want to her. They're always whipping her. Everyone's getting like, you know, spanked. Spanked is the key word in the first book. She uses different words, you know, to describe, you know, flogging and paddling people, spanking people in the other books. But the first book, spanking, most used word. After the trials of the first book, she starts to realize that, you know, or what was it? I think the Prince Dimitri, they have like a little tryst where Dimitri, you know, under pain of punishment, they steal away for a night together, and they talk about how he found out his nature as a slave to try his best to please his masters. But that's his nature. Some people are disobedient, and that's where they find their pleasure. And Beauty realizes that that's her, that she wants to show off her will, and she loves the feeling of being subjugated. So what she does is she engages in a act that will give her the punishment of being sent away to the village, the public village, you know, near the castle, to serve whoever can bid on her for a year, and then they have to return her back because she's still royalty. It's just a punishment. So that's the end of the first book. The second book, it begins with her and Tristan, some other, you know, slave whose master couldn't master him. There's all kinds of public turntables where he gets paddled. People, you know, are just raping you left and right, throwing coins at you. Fun times, man. Good stuff happened in that village. Honestly, the second book was my favorite book because Tristan is such a wonderful character. Now, mind you, Beauty's chapters, the whole first book, and Beauty's chapters in the second and third book are written in third person. But the male characters, Tristan in the second book and Laurent in the third book, are written in first person, which is very interesting. And Tristan has a very introspective and soft nature, the way that Anne Rice wrote him. Reading about Tristan's understanding of what it's like to be a slave was the best part of the entire trilogy, and that happens in the second book. Okay, hey there. Just wanted to hop on and read a little bit. I had to go and get this from the library because I brought it back. You know, this is the portion where Tristan is revealing his innermost thoughts to his master, Nicholas. I would have been bound down, I knew it. Tonight I saw a slave bound like that. Last night I simply assumed it would happen. I would have resisted with my whole body, bridling the way the prince was tonight, bucking, the terror crashing against me and washing away from me. I stopped, engulfing, yes, it had become engulfing. But I held still, I said, and when I realized I wouldn't slip or slide under the blows, all the tension was released. I knew this remarkable exhilaration. I was being offered up to the crowd, and I submitted to it. I collected all the crowd's frenzy to myself, and the crowd enlarged my punishment as they enjoyed it. And I belonged to the crowd, to hundreds and hundreds of masters and mistresses. I yielded to their lust. I held back nothing, resisted nothing. I stopped. He nodded slowly, but he didn't speak. The heat pounded silently in my temples. I sipped the wine, thinking of my own words. It was the same in a smaller way, I said, when the captain thrashed me. He was punishing me for having failed after his training. but he was also testing me to see if I was telling the truth about Stefan, if it was mastering I needed. He was calling my bluff, saying, in effect, I'll give it to you and we'll see if Yo, there's a typo there, if Yo can endure it. And I offered myself to his lash, or at least it seemed so. I never thought, not even in the camp when the soldiers punished me, or at the castle when the lords and ladies looked on, that I could, in a hot noonday village square full of passerby, dance for a soldier's thrash like that. The soldiers trained my cock. They trained me, but they never got that from me. And though I'm terrified of what lies ahead, terrified even of the pony harness, I feel myself opening to all punishments instead of triumphing over them with sublime form as I did in the castle. I am being turned inside out. I belong to the captain, and to you, and to all who look. I am becoming my punishments. Yeah, that's the best part of the whole series. So now back to wherever we were. Yeah, Beauty gets she gets railed out by like the guards, the guards of the kingdom, like every night at the inn, and the guard master is like her master or whatever. He's like a strong roughneck, and all the guards, they just, I mean, no one has like a preferred. Everyone's bisexual, I guess, in this. And Tristan works for the King's Chronicler as like a horse. They put a big old horse plug dildo in him and whip him around town. Lots of fun. Laurent also shows up near the end because he runs away, but they find him, and so the King's Guard, they have fun with him. They put him in a bunch of, punishment or whatever. But then in the middle of all that, some of the slaves get abducted by Arabs. They all get shipped out to Arabia, big quotes, in Arabia. But it's all like safe. Like the thing about these books that I didn't say in the first part is that everything in here is safe. There's never going to be a whipping that breaks skin. There's never going to be any kind of suffering that is permanent or irreversible. You know what I mean? You're always going to be able to walk away from whatever punishment you're forced to endure. And I think that's what Anne Rice said when she said,
and then most of what you got out in the marketplace was a pornography that was contrived by people that had a contempt for the market. And I wanted to write what I considered a pure pornography that had to do with the real fantasies of people. It was for people who share the fantasy. I mean, that was basically what it was. And I wanted to go all the way with it. And I guess I wanted to prove that you could enjoy that kind of fantasy in a very safe way. That you could go to a safe place, these books. You could experience all that these books had to offer on dominance and submission. And you could enjoy all that, and then you could easily exit the book intact without any problems. I wanted to make the Disneyland of S&M. That's really what I wanted to do.
What I was trying to get to was that Queen Eleanor learned this whole slavery game from the Arabs. So they were like, oh, well, we'll just let you do this for a while. This happens. But you'll come back after a year. We worked it out with them. Everything's safe, essentially. They all get done up, spices, gold, everything's beautiful, yada, yada. And there's a cat named Lexius, who's their handler over there. They're not supposed to talk to anybody, blah, blah. And instead of Tristan chapters, there's Laurent chapters in the third one. Laurent was way better of a character, more fun to read, a more intelligent character, a more dangerous character as well. And everyone wants to please Lexius, but Laurent wants to test the water, wants to be in power and wants to cause trouble. He finds a way to get himself in deep trouble with Lexius. He's like, are you a eunuch or something? And Lexius makes the mistake of being alone in a room with Laurent, who's built like the Rock. And Lexius is a slight guy, so Laurent just overpowers him and rapes him and beats him, and then gives Lexius back the power. He's like, all right, do whatever you want, because he doesn't want to always be a master. He also wants to be a slave, so that's why he created that situation for him. But Lexius lets it slide because he likes it, and he's never been in that position before. But he's soft. Good for them. So anyway, Lexius then becomes Laurent's little slave, But he's everyone else's master. What are you gonna do? Beauty gets caught up with all the harem of the Sultan. And they all are just messing with her, big old orgy scene. but they all keep their pants on, and Beauty's like, what's going on? Why can't I reciprocate? And then but Beauty gets caught up with the Sultan's wife one-on-one, and she discovers that over here all the girls get their genitals mutilated. So that was a moment in the book where I thought, oh, maybe, you know, there are some high stakes involved. Maybe, I mean, I know Anne Rice already said that nothing like that happens, but here it is having happened in the book. So that was interesting, kind of very scary. She ends up giving the Sultan's wife an orgasm anyway. The first orgasm was a big deal, but anyway, she tries to sneak her way back to where she was. She gets re-kidnapped because Beauty's parents found out they got kidnapped and they were throwing a hissy fit. So she gets sent back home to her parents, kicking and screaming because she wants to be a sex slave for the rest of her life or something. The other boys, because they didn't want to be, Legacy gets himself kidnapped with them because Laurent has a hold over him. That's cool. And so they all get kidnapped back to Europe, and the boys, since they're so ungrateful, and, you know, their own punishment anyway, they all get sent to 1 year of public ponies or whatever. So they live their entire lives for a year as horses. So there's some pretty like heavy furry stuff going on. And Beauty isn't seeing any suitors. She's super pissed off because all the guys that try to like win her hand or whatever are these soft boys that have never been whipped in their lives. But she can't find anyone to master her, so she's super upset, sad and stuff. Laurent's dad dies, and so he has to put on pants and be a king, and he's like, no, I want to be a horse forever. And you need a queen. Well, who's available? Well, there's Beauty. She always refuses suitors, and he's like, oh, well, I know what's up with that. And so he goes over, and then she's been waiting for him or something, blah, blah, blah. Happy ever after, the end. I gave the whole thing 4 stars because I did enjoy it. But the second book is the best. Oh, the first book, I did have a little bit of PTSD as I read it because I was uncomfortable, like reliving the feeling of having to use your own will to do something that you don't want to do. Like when the characters have to be whipped and stand still and, do so unshackled, so they shouldn't move or scream or anything. That feeling is hard to meet again, but once I dealt with that and I was able to experience it in the book and see the other side of it, of what it's like to come out and be somehow stronger than that experience simply because you as a being last longer than the experience. There's a strange form of power there. But anyway, once I dealt with that, it was all hot, like all that stuff was just whatever. If you just want to read something and chill off to, this will do. So yeah, that's it for me. Bye.
You know what the most dangerous thing in America is, right?